cutting. So this is your basic wood saw. This is just a safety sleeve. There are a lot of different types of saws out. So you need to know what you are doing. This is a combination saw that allows you to do cross cuts and ripping with just one saw, without having to buy separate cross cut saw and a separate ripping saw. This one is actually designed to do both. This one also have Japanese influenced teeth. The teeth are set so that you can cut on the push and on the pull. If you're cutting very rough, large lumber, the teeth should be further apart to allow the blade to also remove the sawdust as you're cutting. And the thicker the lumber, the further apart your teeth should be to give you a proper, efficient cut. And as you're cutting, the sawdust needs to be removed, and the further apart your teeth are, the faster that can happen. If you're using thin wood, plywood, 2x4s, your teeth could be closer together, and that'll give you a smoother cut. So after you finish cutting, your cut side will be smoother. And that allows for when you need to butt two pieces of wood together. You want a smooth cut, not necessarily a rough cut. This saw also give you the ability to cut angles and create angles, just like the the speed square, where the way the wooden handle is cut, this is your 95-degree straight edge, and this is for your 45 degrees. The way you use it is you would line it up on the edge of your wood. If you're making a straight line, line it up with the straight edge under here, and when you make a mark, your mark should be straight. This one is the 45-degree angle. So under here, you line that up with the edge, and now you have a 45-degree. So it gives you some ability to cut angles without having to change tools, as long as you know where your measurements are. So this is your combination hand saw. Always be aware that the edge, the teeth are very sharp. So don't play with the edge. If you need to clean the edge off, clean from the blade side out and rake it off. Do not rub up and down. You will cut your hand. As you start cutting and you cut one piece off, then you go to another piece. The saw blade, the kerf of your cut, that's the kerf. So you see, this removes about 1/8 of an inch of wood just from cutting. That 1/8 of an inch add up every time you cut. Every time you cut from one cut to the other. If these two pieces had to be the same size, I have to take the thickness or the kerf into consideration. I recommend measuring one cut at a time, or understanding how much wood you are removing and take that into consideration when you're measuring. You may have to measure a little extra 1/8 of an inch after your first few pieces that you're measuring. So that way they all end up the same size. So I want to cut a straight line. I'm going to use my speed square to show you. So I'm going to line this edge up with the edge of the wood. So put your edge along the edge of your lumber. Put it to your marking. Hold it steady and make your mark. I can now come and clamp my wood for safety to keep it from moving. And now I don't have to have anyone hold it. I like to start cutting back here, the back part of the saw. It gives me more stability. If I use the top edge to cut, you know, sometimes the saw will wiggle because it is very flexible. Your saw should move. It shouldn't be rigid. It should have some flexibility to it. So now I start back here and I pull it toward me. And I keep my fingers out of the way. This thumb is acting as a brace. I put it up here and I just use it as a guide and a brace. And I start my cut in one direction on my line, and I'm splitting my line. Once I get it started, I keep going. And you will notice I am trying to line my arm up with the saw. So come from the saw and you'll see my arm is fairly straight up to my elbow. My elbow becomes a hinge. Just like when you're using a hammer, you're rocking up and down. My hinge is here, and also my shoulder. My shoulder and my elbow does all the work, not my wrist. I try to keep my wrist straight. To help keep my wrist straight, I use my pointer finger. So my grip on my saw is here. And I'm using the full motion. I'm not going a little bit at a time. I'm using the full motion and the full length of the saw as I cut. I am also not putting too much force into my cut. I am allowing the blade to do its job, and I'm not forcing the saw through the wood. And you'll also notice my blade is almost at like a 30 to 35 degree. Almost, you know, I'm not flat on the wood. And I do that so that I don't have to use as much strength when I'm cutting. I'm cutting at an angle, not straight across. And I cut completely through. You don't have to be strong in order to cut wood of any size. It's all about the motion and how you align yourself with the tool. There are other types of saws also. You have power saws that are, they either use electricity or battery power. This is one. It's called a reciprocating saw or a sawzall. It comes with different types of blades. Short blades that are made for wood or metal. They also have blades that are good for plastic. A lot of the wood blades are also good for plastic, cutting plastics. So this is a short and this is a long for thicker lumber or for thinner lumber, 2x4s. And this is more for like 4x4s and 6x6s. The blade goes in the front. There's a locking mechanism on the side. You lift the locking mechanism, put your blade in, release, and the blade locks in place. And a reciprocating saw reciprocates. It doesn't just move. It goes down and up, kind of in almost a half circle like. And when I turn it on, you can see it's hard to see it moving up and down, but it also moves up and down and back and forward. You see that motion? So this allows for an easier, faster cut, but only on certain materials. I would prefer a hand saw for 2x4s, and I'll use this for bigger woods like 4x4s or 6x6s.